Okay, welcome in the audience and welcome to Conversations. Our guest for this particular program is Eliyho or Eliyho Matz, and he's an experimental historian,
Right.
Political historian.
Political historian.
And he's got a very interesting story to tell, with particular reference, I think, to the country of Israel and the Jewish population of the world. But in any event, Ellie, welcome so very much to Conversation.
Thank you.
I love your writing. You are a really good writer.
Thank you
for that at the outset. And I wanted you, if you could share where you were born and raised, educated. And I know you want to make a kind of statement which you can kind of fit into it, a current statement, I think, about the election of Mr. Obama or something.
No, it's something a little bit different. But I was born in Tel Aviv. Mm-hmm. I studied near Tel Aviv. I was served in the military.
Mm-hmm. You were born in 48?
48, September 48. September, the year. Were
your parents involved in
yes, both my parents arrived on the Exodus.
Oh, really?
The ship Exodus. And my father was, who's still alive, is 97, has been one of the organizers of this trip from Europe to Palestine.
Mr. Uris made it famous.
Yeah, and Mr. Uris made it famous. Mm-hmm. My mom is still alive too. She was also on the ship, but you know the ship was intercepted near the beaches of Palestine. Mm-hmm. My parents were put in jail in Germany for half a year. But then as soon as the state was created, they came back to Israel. Okay, the reason for that is they had all their family was in Israel, and they had nobody left in Europe anymore.
Wow, they had been able to get out.
Well, my dad was a soldier. My dad actually fought the Nazis as a lieutenant of a special unit in the Russian army. He was a commander of a squad that was sharpshooters.
Oh, sharpshooters.
Sharpshooters, and he walked by foot from the Urals to Berlin.
Wow.
By foot, with
a
those.
A lot of people did.
With that thing, and wounded twice in battle, and returned to fight.
So they were Russian.
No, they were not Russians.
They were not Russian.
They were Polish Jews who ran to near China, to a place near China, and that's where my dad joined the military, the Russian military, as a volunteer.
Yeah. Then he would have been involved in the counterattack from Stalingrad and everything.
No, he was not there. My parents were near China.
Oh, I see.
Okay, they were, and then that's where the reorganization of the military, of the Russian military, was, and he was sent back with his unit of sharpshooters, and ended up in Berlin, and because of his heroism, gained a permission from the military to go and get my mother back from near China.
But he advanced on Berlin at the end of the war?
Yeah, he was in Berlin. He was the unit that conquered Berlin.
I was really interested in that because the Wehrmacht was they thought they were overwhelmingly powerful. They were going to take over Russia in a couple of days or something, and there was a resistance. It must have been out past the Urals, because they came back with great force, tanks and so forth. They came with great force. One had and Russia took the brunt, it seems to me, of the war. 20 million.
Yeah,
dead.
Well, but that was just not the war. There was other reasons. Communism and Stalin's idea of how to purge us and other things.
Yeah, that's okay. But they took a serious brunt of the loss, and they had come and rolled over and everything, and they were able to make a counterattack. And how was that? That was all being organized out east of the Urals?
That's
all
where
those tanks were being made? Were there supply lines coming, Lend-Lease or something?
Yeah, subsidy America. Everything came to China.
Through China. Okay.
To China, to the Far East, Vladivostok. Vladivostok, you know? Whatever they call the thing. And actually, because of my dad's Jewishness and his staunch Jewishness, he also managed to spend a few months in jail. Because he was not really a communist. He was never, and once on Yom Kippur, he did not participate in any trainings because he decided to fast that day. And the political officer of that unit decided to punish him for that. And since my dad was in a command position, he beat him up.
No.
And he told him to go to hell.
That was in Russia.
In Russia, in the military, and,
So
they put him for 3-4 months he worked in a power station in Siberia till they released him and took him back to the army.
Is that an expression of Soviet-based anti-Semitism?
Yeah, well, there was.
Was it strong and everything?
It was very strong in the military, but I think my dad was more interested in defeating Germany. Than this thing, because his whole family was killed in the process of the invasion and the killing in the Ukraine that Hitler has committed. And his sense of revenge was so overwhelming that he didn't really care about anything except defeating the Germans.
Well, there was
he did so.
There was a huge effort in that direction generally in the world.
Yeah, but many people don't know how many Jews participated in that effort in the Russian military process. And my dad was in the forefront of those units, because they were sharpshooters, and they were working and going before every other unit in the military.
Did you see the movie about Stalingrad? It was called Judd Law.
But a similar thing, but not exactly like this.
Stalingrad was
but my dad was not in Stalingrad. He actually came from the south, all the way from the south, to Berlin.
And it's interesting to me that he was strongly Jewish and that kind of thing, and all of that, because that's resistance to the war, to the Nazis, and there was resistance to what was going on in Germany in the name of anti-Semitism, including what's called the Jewish Holocaust. What was going on, and by a lot of people that was allowed to happen. But Bergson, it seems to me, was somebody you've been informed by.
Well, I grew up at home. At
you
home.
Want to get to him.
I grew up at home, and of course all those stories were flying from all. Not so much from my parents, because they did not really discuss it, but for all the relatives who came to them and discussed the miseries they went through. My father fought back, so he didn't have much to. He wasn't in concentration camps. He wasn't, and my mom was a nurse in a hospital, a military hospital. One second. And what I'm trying to say is, I had an interest in the Holocaust since I was a child, and as a result of it, when I came to the United States in 1974, I went to the University of Massachusetts, and the University of Massachusetts, there is a gentleman, a Gentile, a professor, his name is Dr. David S. Wyman, and he wrote a few years later one of the most important books on America and the Holocaust. It's called The Abandonment of the Jews, America and the Holocaust. In the process of working with him, I became sort of an assistant, not really, but I started doing serious research on the subject of how America responded to the Holocaust.
That was really interesting, because it was entirely underdone.
Underdone, absolutely.
And he was
it's still underdone today.
Okay, thank you. That's important. We're going to get to that. But I mean, it was allowed to happen, and he was a force here in the United States trying to organize an active response.
That was Mr. Bergson. That was Mr. Bergson. He was a Palestinian.
And it was going unnoticed by so much of the political class.
No, not true. Not true at all. Not true at all.
Set me straight.
Mr. Bergson was a Palestinian Israeli. Or Palestinian Jew at that time, because Britain ruled Palestine, and your passport said that you were Palestinian Jew. That's how it was, a Palestinian Arab or Muslim. And he came to the United States on a certain mission by the underground, and with
Jabotinsky.
He came with Jabotinsky, but Jabotinsky died immediately in the summer of 1940 from a heart attack in the Catskills.
Really?
Yeah.
How old was Jabotinsky?
I don't know, in the 60s. But that created a situation in which 5 or 6 Palestinian Jews. Yeah, not friends. They were people who actually were members of the Irgun.
But didn't they call them the Berkson?
The Berkson
Partners?
boys. No, they called
Berkson
them.
boys.
Yeah,
that's what it was. Yeah,
because
right.
they were young people.
Yeah, right.
They were young people, and they created in the year 1943 the most vociferous anti-FDR attempt
to get attention to what
not
was
only
going
to
on.
get to save the Jews.
Yeah.
One of the greatest helpers was Ben Hecht, the famous playwright.
Yes, wonderful.
And writer, the man, you know, he eventually, he was the person who wrote the final version of Gone with the Wind.
Okay, did he really? I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
many people
And there
don't.
was a whole raft of people.
Yeah,
Will
but he.
Rogers or something?
No, nothing to do with Will Rogers.
Okay.
Will Rogers was only involved in the year 1943 as a congressman from California, helping to try to pass legislation to force FDR to recognize that there is a problem.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to
That had to be addressed and was not. What
America.
was the Wyman's title of that?
The abandonment of the Jews.
There was a lot of feeling among the Jews in general, an existential cry that
Well,
this was going on. And it wasn't do you understand?
Of course, but I don't know if that this thing. It's very difficult to pinpoint.
Yeah.
To pinpoint why American Jews behave the way they behave.
How did they behave?
Well, if you look at the Berkson records, American Jews basically supported his activities, mainly supporting him with money.
Berkson?
To put full ad pages in the New York Times, which irritated the administration.
But there was not enough to avail, in a sense, in terms of actual policy decisions and things that were being done, other than just building up the war effort.
Well, eventually the president could not neglect that pressure.
Yeah.
The historical questions among historians is who is really responsible for the creation of the War Refugee Board.
Okay. War Refugee Board.
Which was established in January 1944 as a response to the pressure put on the FDR administration.
Was that involving Jewish things, but there were also what used to be called DPs, or displaced persons from the war?
That's after the war.
Yeah.
We are talking. We are talking still in the war and possibilities of saving Jews.
Yes.
That were created because of the establishment of the War Refugee Board. As a matter of fact, one of the most important issues they dealt with was Wallenberg, Raoul Wallenberg, who went on the
famous movie.
No. There was no movie. I don't think there's a movie made on that yet. He was a Swede. No, that was not. That was somebody else. Spielberg dealt with somebody else.
What was that movie?
I forgot his name.
Anyway,
Schindler's List.
Schindler's List.
But that has nothing.
Not
No.
Wallenberg.
Wallenberg was a member of the Swedish royal family who spoke English and recruited in Sweden unfortunately, by a man who was a cover-up for the OSS.
Okay.
He was the economic attaché in Stockholm. Okay.
Isn't there a statue of him near the
United
Nations?
No.
You sure there's
no,
not?
there's no statue.
David Finn?
No, absolutely.
Finn?
No, absolutely not. There's no statue for this man. Okay. And this gentleman who recruited him was the military attaché in Stockholm, who actually acted as an OSS man. And he gave Wallenberg $50,000 in his backpack. And that's when he arrived in Budapest. The Russians killed him because of that money, and because the Russians had one of the best detailed espionage centers in Stockholm.
Yeah, and the OSS was the precursor, Donovan, right?
That's correct.
Precursor to the CIA.
That's correct. So the War Refugee Board saved, according to Dr. Wyman's estimates, around 100,000 Jews.
Out of 6 million.
Out of 6 million. But that was believed by Dr. Wyman, myself, and a bunch of other people. Was done by Mr. Berkson. If Mr. Berkson did not get together with Mr. Ben Hecht and create pageants, and
there was a whole raft of people in support of him.
Right, Stella Adler, Will Rogers Jr., Senator Johnston, another senator from the state, Senator Thomas from Utah.
Yeah. And there was, as the reports became more and more obvious and so forth of what some of the atrocities were, particularly toward the end when the war was going badly, and things always go badly when there's a war coming to an end and everything, but the anguish of the Jewish people at wanting something done to address it, and it wasn't being addressed except in terms of D-Day and all that kind
right.
of
Well,
stuff.
that eventually became the
You know what I mean, though?
Of
It was
course,
a
of course,
terribly
of course.
stressful time.
But there were attempts to save Jews before D-Day. As I think we discussed.
And Bergson would have been one who led
Well,
that.
the year 1943 is the most the year that things were determined in the United States vis-a-vis a bunch of issues. First of all, issues after the war, issues before the invasion. You know, I think in one of the articles that I wrote, I tried to explain that the Germans themselves wanted to create some sort of a way to surrender. And nobody was heeding to that because our intelligence here was not really as good as many people.
In 43 there were
In 42 already.
42?
In 42.
Ooh. Now, who's the fellow who flew
and
who's the fellow who flew to Scotland?
No, that was Hess, but that was nothing to do. It had to do with the Abwehr, which is the the counterintelligence.
Oh.
What you call Admiral Canaris, and a bunch of other people around him who were trying desperately to hook up with the Allies in order to topple the Hitler regime.
Okay, there it was. In 1940, he would have had overwhelming support. Herr Hitler would have had overwhelming support of the vast majority of Germans as he marched into Paris.
But not really.
There wasn't effective opposition able to be realized or able to be manifest. At least that's the impression.
Yes, the impression we get. But there is in the German psyche. Immediately after the start of killing of Jews in big quantities, okay, a lot of people who were not SS people or Nazi party members felt that this issue is going to ruin Germany forever.
And many would claim they were not aware of it.
No, but that has nothing to do with
the
the war.
There would have been
a lot of people
said that.
Yeah, but
was it the truth? Many people didn't know what was
that's
going
not true. I don't believe
You
that.
think the whole German nation knew what was going on from the get-go?
I don't know if the whole nation. I only know that immediately after the event, after starting killing Jews, a group of Germans who were high-positioned people in government decided immediately to go to the West and ask for help to topple the regime. And many people, and we have documentation of this.
Did that end up being Rommel and so forth?
Well, Rommel ended up, as one of them. I mean, the most important soldier Hitler had was against him, so he gave him an option.
And then the bomb threat that came and everything.
No, well, Stauffenberg. No, it didn't come late. It starts actually in the middle of 42.
Okay, then that brings it, but we had Kristallnacht. We had this kind of thing, and we had anti-Semitism, and I wonder, maybe it's a sidebar, because I know we want to talk about Israel and about current events and everything, but I'm wondering if you could, given all your thought and so forth, because I have a very hard time understanding of being a WASP and whatnot, whence comes anti-Semitism?
Well,
why has the world manifest? What's not to like about the Jewish culture and people, if I may? Is it an anti-intellectual strain among the population of the world? The Jews have such a deep-felt sense of justice. They have such a deep-felt respect for intellectual curiosity, for learning, for contributions to improving the human condition that outweigh almost any other group of people you could imagine. Is it just they used to have a political party in the United States called the Know Nothing Party. It makes me think of the Tea Party people.
Right.
I call it ignorance.
I call it theocracy.
But what I would like to know is, what is the source over the long haul, as it were, of anti-Semitism? What's not to like about the Jewish people? Or where does that come from? Or how do we deal with such a thing? Is it just plain old anti-intellectualism?
It probably is.
Largely.
Yeah.
Now that's very dangerous because you could have anti-intellectualism that could be start coming now. They're arguing about the debt limit and everything, and there's all these irrational forces coming, saying,
Absolutely.
and they're thinking of intellectuals as the enemy. And Mr. Reagan started talking about pointy-headed intellectuals.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You understand what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
absolutely,
You say,
absolutely.
is there a connection,
I'll-
or where comes? Just explain to us in a couple minutes anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism is an old story.
Why?
Because of varieties. It goes back to the time of Christ.
Okay.
Okay, and I don't think that you can pinpoint one reason for that.
You've only got 2 minutes
Yeah.
to explain it to
Okay,
me.
but it's an illogical outcome, a logical outcome of certain thoughts. But I would like to talk about Mr. Bergson and anti-Semitism.
I just threw that out as like tasting of a basketball.
The standard American Jewish response to World War II, the standard American official organizational response is, because of anti-Semitism, we couldn't do a lot here. Okay, and that's exactly what Mr. Bergson did not pay attention to.
Anti-Semitism in the world?
In America and the world, right.
Okay.
Mr. Bergson had a different idea of this, and he once explained it to me.
Okay,
you
good.
know,
Yeah, you were associated with it.
I
Yes,
was.
yeah.
A third of people hate Jews, for whatever reason it is. A third of people love Jews. A third of people are not sure. How many thirds can you work with?
We only got 3.
No, but you have 2/3 you can work with, because a third love them, a third are not sure, and only a third hates them. So you have 2/3 you can work with.
Well, if you had a 2/3 majority in parliamentary
Here we
system,
are.
you
By
can
the way,
do anything you want.
by the way, he went with that to Congress. With
Okay.
that idea,
Yeah.
he looked at the issue as if it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, who looked at it? Roosevelt?
Mr. Bergson.
Mr. Bergson.
Right. He looked at the issue of anti-Semitism as something that did not exist for him.
Okay.
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 And that was a simple, and that's the way he won congressmen and senators' sympathy.
He was talking about those the third that was for the United States.
In America,
In America,
a
okay.
third hates,
Yeah.
a third loves, a third is not
I
sure.
think maybe that would hold. We got 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat, and 1/3 uncertain now.
Yeah,
In the polling.
here we are. So you have
Yeah.
2/3 to work with.
So it may
And
be
it-
universal.
it's the-
it may
it's-
be a universal kind of thing.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
works in
yeah,
human society, maybe.
yeah.
You're a historian.
Absolutely.
No, what is it?
Experimental
historian. Yeah.
I would like to experiment. Anyway, so going back to the Bergson, in the year 1943, he made an enormous effort in the United States, in spite of all other people, including Jewish organization, who said that there really isn't anything much to do to save Jews. He said it's impossible.
He took that position. Okay, go on.
He took that position,
Yeah.
that the government of the United States, not Jewish organization, and not the Vatican, or not the Christian Church in America here, but the government of the United States must and has a moral obligation to try to save Jews, because they are the only geopolitical force that can do anything to save Jews. Okay, and a result of
the
putting.
government does have a responsibility
Okay,
for the whole
as a
society.
result of that pressure, the government of the United States did respond. Okay, in the form of creating the War Refugee Board that saved 100,000 Jews.
Out of 6 million.
Out of
that
6,
weren't.
well,
That's not a very good
it's
record.
not, the numbers are not good,
Right.
but that's
Something,
at
yeah.
least something was
Yeah,
done,
okay.
while all the other people, all the other organizations were fearing anti-Semitism. They're fearing all kinds of things, real or unreal.
Right.
Okay, so what he did more was, you know, if you look at European history, you see that one of the things that Hitler did to Jews is he took away their political identity. And when you take a political identity, you become nobody. You become stateless, nothing. Mr. Bergson tried to reestablish a political identity for Jews, and he created in Washington in May '44 a Hebrew Committee of National Liberation, which was an organization that would support and give a political identity to Jews. And that was attacked by all Jewish organizations, saying it's impossible to do such a thing.
Why would that be attacked by all Jews?
Because of
Jewish establishment?
because of the same reason.
Because of Zionism?
Because of all sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
Of course, many people do not remember that he was one of the leaders of the underground. Okay, Bergson. He was Irgun, right? But he was the.
There was one Stern gang.
No, he actually was friendly with Stern, but they split early in the game. Yeah, no, they split early in the game.
Okay.
Stern, they had no. Bergson had no interest in Stern.
Okay.
Bergson had an interest in saving Jews and creating an Israeli nation, or he called it a Hebrew nation.
And he also had an interest in saving Jews. He wasn't aiming at a certain class or anything, or rich or anything. He wanted to serve everybody.
Everybody.
He was trying to save all of them, all class, working class, everything.
Anybody. There's no selection.
Yeah, that was important.
By the way, he
just trying to save a few rich people that could buy their way out.
That was not his way. No. By the way, he started doing it in 1936.
Okay.
Already in Europe. When he came here, one of his best friends in the United States was Mrs. Gunther.
Grass?
No. Frances Gunther.
Okay.
She was Frances Gunther.
Okay.
The famous, she and her husband were famous travel writers. They wrote about the history, Russia, and Francis Gunther. Also, he was friendly with as I said, with Ben Hecht and other people. And
why do I have him associated with the tin drum?
The tin drum has to do with Gunter grass has to do with potatoes.
Yeah, but it has, that's what I got a thing from you. No. Plus the one about the Eskimos was really, you could do shtick, brother, even though you're very serious. You are a great writer. I'm telling you one and all to know that.
I tried to explain the problem from all sides.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, but
you got a great sense of humor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Plus a great morality, of course. Yeah.
Anyway, so Mr. Bergson tried to create an identity. By the way, he created the famous saying, the famous advertising, in order to create a state, an Israeli state or a Hebrew state. He said it to the American people, advertised, it's 7076 in Palestine.
I'm sorry?
It's 1776 in Palestine. Okay. I don't think any American has any misunderstanding what that meant. Whoa. And he rallied the American public behind that idea.
Okay, relating to the
creation
of Israel?
Creation of this right.
Oh, right. Okay,
unfortunately,
that's an interesting analogy. Yeah.
Unfortunately,
because there would have to be something to associate in a new kind of way. The United States of America was coming out of the Enlightenment, steam engine, industrial revolution, 1,000 years of feudalism after Rome. You had historical legitimacy vested in the dynastic states. They set up something across the ocean in 1776. They were thought of as bumpkins by the royal heads and everything. And they set up an existentially significant new movement in universe compared to, that was in touch with the future, what the future required, rather than reifying the outdated institution.
Absolutely.
That's a very important kind of thing. He was suggesting that Israel's foundation was along that line.
Absolutely.
To appeal to the American patriotism.
Not only this, but one second. He suggested that, and in reality, what he suggested was not accepted, which is the reason for all the trouble we have now in the Middle East. And I will explain that in a very simple sentence. One of Bergson's.
Well, wait a minute, if I may. If you're talking about that, that's big. That's a big. What are the major revolutions? You had the 1,000 years. You had Rome for 1,000 years. Then you had 1,000 years of hereditary power. You had serfs. You had a system of injustice, inappropriate to realizing what the future required. Then you had a major break with the Enlightenment-inspired American experience that more or less has a template that has more or less, one could see, be accepted by the world as the one upon which we were going to recognize what is historically legitimate in our own time.
Absolutely.
You feel like
absolutely.
That? And they were trying to say there was a break then with the American inspired thing, or is it something that would go along with the American?
No, along with.
Go along with.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, they were here in
that then would be like there were supporters of King George when, if I may, just for a minute, it's worth getting at because it's a big issue. If there is such a thing as a rend, a large-scale systems rend in the organization politically of the world and so forth, and when Cornwallis was at Yorktown at the end of our Revolutionary War, I don't know, 60–70% of the people from the South were in support of King George. They were joining Cornwallis in a fight against Washington, Jefferson, and all that. They were not on the side of the revolution. They were supporting the old order, the Ancien regime. They were. So when you're talking about that, when you talk about from 1776, you have a system in place much that's now 230 years old.
Absolutely.
Is it out of date? That's the
I'm not so sure.
Is it out of date, or does those who kiss the hem of American imperialism, let's just say, okay, that is bombing all over the place now, if I may, kiss the hem of that and say, we just want to be, and they get their sense of legitimacy, and they assume they're legitimate like the historical feudalism heads of state did. Is that the kind of, would there have been a break with the American model as the one that's relevant to the future? Which a lot of people are thinking, we do not have a system that's relevant to the future. No. The same way the feudalism had to be transcended. The system that was inspired by the United States of America is out of date. We need something new.
I'm not so sure.
That kind of a break.
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
Maybe to align with the Arab nations or something, a new geopolitical order on that large area.
The new.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. But you see, Bergson's idea was very, very simple. Very simple. If Israel is going to become a state or a nation, a new nation, which it became already, it must write a constitution.
Yeah, I've read in the literature. I was surprised, if I may.
But let me just finish. Yeah.
Okay, they don't have a constitution.
Israel has
statutory.
Okay, Bergson was the only person in the Israeli parliament who stood up to Ben-Gurion and told him, we are not going to be able to run this country without a constitution. Remember, he came from America. Right. He was a Jeffersonian.
Who?
Bergson came from America. He was here for 8 years.
Yeah, okay.
He created the foundation for the Israeli state. Were signed by Truman, not because of the Ben-Gurion. They were signed because Truman understood exactly what Bergson was talking about.
And what was Bergson talking about? I hear you say they need a constitution. They just operate
absolutely.
Israel does not have a constitution.
Absolutely not.
And that's a major thing, that there should be a constitution.
You cannot function. You cannot function without.
Well, they've been functioning successfully for a long time without that. And you think that's Bergson, and you think that's a big issue? That's
the most quintessential survival issue for the state, for the nation of the Israelis.
Okay.
It will be.
Why didn't all those people come up with a constitution?
Because
why did they decide to only do things statutorily?
2,000 years of political inexperience, don't bring constitutions.
Okay.
8 years of being in America here and understanding what America stands for. Brought Bergson to Palestine, to Israel now, and to demand that there must be a constitution.
Okay, so he was steeped in and support of the American example.
Absolutely.
He was.
As I said, it's 70-76 in Palestine.
Okay. That's good PR. That's a good slogan. That would fit right into the ad campaign.
Yeah.
And that would help sway the country.
Absolutely. It swayed, by the way.
Right.
It swayed the country.
Right.
America would not have supported the creation.
Particularly all the patriotism coming out of the Second War.
So America would have not supported the Israeli nation, the creation of the Israeli nation, without the understanding that it's going to be a nation that will write a constitution and will function in the world as a normal modern nation.
Okay, now help me here then, if you can. And there were people, Roosevelt wasn't stupid and there are people. Why was it that the terms by which wholehearted support for this would be attended upon some sort of a firm understanding, if not even something signed on paper or something, that there would be a foundational constitution written for the emergence of this new state of Israel? Why, if they're talking 1776, that's the first thing we did. They would declare independence from something. We did. We set up a constitution. We had a constitutional convention. They didn't have to do that in Israel. Why didn't the American, if they're going to say 1776 in Israel, Why didn't the people of the United States who might be supporting that say, let's write a constitution?
Well,
they got a lot of smart people.
I know. Historically, they didn't write.
Why?
And because they, as I said, inexperience.
Oh, come on! They had a lot of smart people.
I'm saying, but that eventually.
They're new PR.
I know, but eventually that Ben-Gurion and his supporters decided that that's not what they're going to do. They copied one thing from the American experience, is writing a Declaration of Independence, which I think I gave you some material to read. Unfortunately, that was a very bad copy of the American Declaration of Independence, because of civil rights that to people and all kinds of other things. As in a matter of fact, what you have today, what you have today in Israel is more sort of a religious state.
Okay, now
that supersedes.
Suppose the United States of America was written in 1776, and we're going to have a country that's going to be only allowing or giving return to high Anglicans from England, because we're all high Anglican, Protestant, religious-based notion for a nation. That's what Israel's done. Is there something about having an opening upon, let's say, now, you know, there's 195 nation states in the world now recognized by the United Nations and growing. And we have in New York City, if I may, we have sizable communities of 189,000 of them. Everybody in the world is here. It's not just Presbyterians.
Yeah, and we get along.
Why do they set up a state that's only for Jews?
Yeah.
Now that's a problem, is it not, or is it?
It is.
And would you, if you had a constitution, would it have to be open to people?
Absolutely,
other than those
absolutely.
Of Jewish persuasion, and that ran counter to the ideology of the Zionists.
Right.
Established ideology.
Well, I don't know.
Is that more or less right,
well, you see,
set me straight.
Yeah. Well, I'll try to explain something.
Thank you.
The political success of Zionism ended in 1948.
Okay.
By the creation of an Israeli nation. And that success has to be acknowledged, and it's still not being acknowledged today. That's, by the way, why I wrote this book called Who's an Israeli?
Okay,
because
I'm going to hold this up, and maybe wherever they've got a camera, they could come in on it. This is Eliyho or Eliyho Matz's book. It is titled Who is an Israeli? Do you mind if I pitch the book? Do you mind if I help you sell some books?
Yeah, I know.
You don't mind. You don't object to that. You're not so shy, right?
I don't. I haven't sold many books anyway.
All right, here it is. This is the book, and it's available. And is it? Can you get it Google or not? Or,
you can Google it.
Amazon or something?
No. I have it in my store. It's in my store.
You have it in your
I'm
store.
in my house.
On 15th Street.
Yeah,
right?
I have it in my house.
You have
in my house and in the store.
Is there anywhere they could write and get it or something?
Yeah, they can write.
You haven't put it electronically up on the internet?
No.
Why don't you put it up?
Because it's not really. It's a limited.
It doesn't have anything to say.
It has the most important things. It's
why don't you let us help you distribute and let more and more people be able to get access
people can
to
call me in the office.
And I'm here to tell you, this man is an incredible, good writer. Not only in terms of political morality, but funny. I mean, this man could do shtick. I mean, it's really good. I'm sorry, I don't know if the book has that in it.
Yes, it has.
That thing about the Eskimos, it made me laugh for half an hour. The Eskimos in Israel. Anyway, so this is the book, and how does somebody, if they want to get it, how do they get it?
They can call my office 212.
Yeah. Okay.
620-0440, and they can come and pick up a copy.
Okay, at the bookstore.
It's not a book; it's a stationery. You remember?
Stationery store. Yeah, and where's the safest place to be in an earthquake? Could you tell me
that? A stationery store.
That's funny. That's funny.
By the way, Where's the
safest place to? He has a stationery store. Where's the safest place to be in an earthquake?
A stationery
store.
Yeah,
but it makes a difference in intonation. It's different stationery store than stationary store.
Yeah. By the way, I also sell Polish pencils.
You sell Polish pencils with the races above that.
Right.
Good. And if you get enough rubber bands, the shipping's free, right? Man's a genius. I mean, he's really good. Yeah, you got a great. Anyway, back to this issue of the Constitution.
Okay,
Israel.
By the way, because of the fact that they didn't write a constitution, they've never defined politically who is an Israeli.
All right.
So, for example, there was a case a famous case that went to the Israeli Supreme Court of a Jew became a Christian, became a member of the Carmelite Christian religion, and lived in a monastery in Israel and wanted to become an Israeli. And the Supreme Court decided that his nationality cannot be Israeli, and instead they wrote nationality not clear. Would you like to be a nationality like this?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I sort of cotton on to the American model. To
Okay.
In Israel, like that everybody in
Israel,
the
the Israeli nationality is not Israeli. In simple words, because they've never written a constitution and never defined the Israeliness.
Do they recognize this in the political class in Israel, or this issue that you're trying to raise with this
well,
point of
very, very, very few people. Actually, there's a court case which I supported for many years in trying to explain that Israeliness. Okay? By the way, I have a political identity. I'm an American and an Israeli because I was born in Israel. So what I'm trying to say is, because of the difficulties of understanding their political status, okay, they cannot integrate into the region.
Into the region.
Into the region.
Well,
now, and I would like.
Suppose you take the example of the United States. Only high Episcopals.
Yeah.
Would be here.
It's
a state for the poor of high. All the heads of the crowned heads of the Episcopal
Ain't
Church
gonna work.
were here.
Ain't gonna work.
Nobody else could come.
Ain't gonna work.
Is that a model that's stretched, of course, but it's a model of trying to get a state? Are there other states that are based strictly upon religion as a means by which one becomes, and right of return to I don't know. We're all African.
I don't know. You can look at the. I don't think.
We're all African.
Right,
Do you
but I don't.
That we all have returned to Africa.
But I don't want to go to the models of Saudi Arabia or Iran.
Well, I'm serious.
I'm very serious. So Israelis, I would like to suggest something, and I hope somebody catches us one day in the American political system. If Mr. Obama, okay, will stand. By the way, this is an idea that Mr. Bergson had for all his life as a political idea, a future idea of the region. If Mr. Obama, the region, if Mr. Obama will stand up at Ankara, Turkey, or in Cairo, or in Cairo, it will make a statement, make a political statement that the region should become a geopolitical region, the same as the European bloc. We will have a Middle Eastern bloc in which countries will exchange ideas, merchandise, industry, and banking, and America will help them. We will have a new bloc in the world, which will have more cooperation, and I think it will save Mr. Obama's presidency.
So Israel could become like, we got 50 states in the United States. Israel could be one of the states of this Middle Eastern bloc,
Absolutely.
And they're all working as a united entity.
A Middle Eastern bloc.
A Middle Eastern bloc, including
Saudi,
Africa and the Islamic countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Saudi Arabia has money. Israel has knowledge. Egypt has a lot to contribute. Jordan has to contribute. Lebanon is, and of course you have Turkey, which has been a democracy, a constitutional democracy since Kemal Ataturk took over.
Right.
And I think there's a lot to learn from each other.
Well,
but what you need is an American initiative here, okay, to stand up and say to the world, we are going to help them by resolving that problem.
Oh, that's an interesting idea in and of itself. Unfortunately, a lot of the world since, well, let's say roughly Columbus, Pizarro, has been a matter of Eurocentric colonization of the rest of the world. So we have that kind of thing. You've got a terrible expansion of NATO now. NATO's right up to the door of Russia, even though they broke all promises. I would think the people in Russia are very nervous of NATO.
Absolutely.
Or Western, what would it be, Eurocentric view of what is legitimate historically. Back to that question of legitimacy, you'd have a little hard time with that. It seems to me like in the case of our nation here, we came to the eastern seaboard and there were some people here, and what we did is conquer them. And that's the history of the world. The strong, who have the military power and the economic power to, exert themselves, can conquer them. I just saw a thing about Custer and everything on the History Channel. and that we conquered the people, the indigenous people, and that's the history of the world. Those who have the Gatling gun, Britain had the Gatling gun, they could conquer India. And so the Western Eurocentric is part of it. Also, couldn't there emerge Gaddafi, for instance, in the news a lot now?
But I would like to
if I may, he's connected to the African Union and to the United States of Africa. That could be another group of people that are going to be included in a politically relevant alliance or something.
Absolutely.
But it's all overshadowed by the idea in people's minds that the historically legitimate model is that which is more or less been accepted by the whole world, including China. It's a state capitalism. The United States of America's model, which is European-based or Eurocentric, has been accepted as historically legitimate. Anything outside of that is beyond the pale, and partly because it's still its own. The interests of the political and the economic organization of the world serves about the upper, at the very best, 20% of the world population. Everybody else is wallowing around in poverty.
Yeah, but we have
Frankly, the whole world.
Well,
so you don't have an alliance that's going to bring in or pay any attention to the less advantaged people of the world, and you can't have any representation of that within any kind of a political entity that you would try to aspire to kiss the hem of the example of the United States example coming out of the Enlightenment.
Well,
I mean, that's all just a few
Right, right. But I think that due to the revolution, the Egyptian revolution, and due to
you see the terrible trouble that's
well, one second. I'm saying
you got 40
because
million poverty people living on garbage.
I know, but the how do you solve that problem?
All right. Well, you got a big problem.
How do you?
You can't do it with the model that the United States is insisting. They're dropping predators.
I know, but so that's what.
And the ally of the United States is Israel.
Yeah.
They've tied their hand to a country.
By the way, Egypt
whose
is
model
also
is out of date with what's required. Where is the example that's relevant to what the future needs in terms of a political, an economic system that could liberate humanity?
Well,
at the same time, you got weapons that could annihilate humanity for the first time since about 1970. Where's the vision for a future of elemental justice, which has never been, doesn't exist, and there's no model for it now?
Well, we'll have to start somewhere.
Well, all right, that's true.
Okay, we'll have to start somewhere, and what I'm suggesting is if the region will become.
You're talking now the Middle East.
The Middle East region, the Mediterranean.
North Africa included?
No, not
Iran?
Egypt is Africa.
No, Iran. No, is Iran?
Iran. By the way, it can join. It can join. We have nothing.
How far does that go? What's the basis of the unitedness
as
of
far
the
as far
you're talking about?
As far as the imagination goes,
I like that.
as long as there is cooperation, political and economic cooperation between the nations, there will be a different Middle East.
I think out of emerging, there was a Pew poll taken of the people of the Middle East at large, and it was very good. I think it was a well-taken thing. They took, where's the major problem that you can see in the world? It wasn't, terrorists or Al-Qaeda or anything. It was the United States and Israel. Israel is at the hip, joined to the United States, $4 billion a year.
More than that. But that, in order,
So you're tied in with the evil empire, which is Britain in 1776. Now it's the United States. And Israel is a representation. Who's wagging that dog? And
a representation without a constitution.
Well, okay, in the case of Israel. But the main problem is the main dog is the United States.
I know,
but it's out of date with what's required, and it's coming home to roost politically, locally here in this country now, maybe with the emergence of all these know-nothing forces in the society, because our leadership does not have a vision that the future requires that is liberating.
Absolutely.
Okay?
And that's what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
I think Mr. Bergson suggested it in the 50s, that there should be a cooperation. And that will take out the sting out of this whole thing and make the United States exactly what you are not describing.
Well,
a positive force in the region. By the way, because
you talk about the region again, you can't put it into a larger geopolitical context.
You can, by the way. You can, absolutely.
No, I'm saying, can you? You're smart.
You have imagination, yeah.
Can you put it, imagination, okay, can you put it into the larger evolution beyond, let's say, James Joyce, the famous poet, Irish, had a thing, he said, history is a nightmare of injustice, okay? Or Isaac Asimov, the great polymath. I did a program with him. He one time said that this is the defining generation We've been on this planet as a species for 200,000 years. 200,000 years, the mitochondria tells us. 10,000 generations. This is the defining generation. Yeah. And we're still arguing and setting up a thing. Everything is interconnected to everything else. We're beginning to understand. It's a global village.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like that.
Absolutely.
But our leadership is reifying outdated institutions, mostly from the Scottish Enlightenment and the establishment of the United States of America, and economics, which is essential to everything, is all predicated on an idea that is perfectly all right for some plutocratic class, whether it's statist or private sector, to own all the capital assets. You understand?
Of course.
And the trend of all production is for capital assets to increasingly be responsible for production, and the mass of the people have no ownership on the way the capital is formed in any political entity. It's okay for them to.
They have some money.
All the way they can get. The only way they can get money is like serfs on a feudal estate. If the capitalists deign to give them a job on their estate, so they can get away. So that they can get some money. And that's the only way we have to distribute demand to the masses of the people. And Keynes said, we are heading for structural, technologically unemployment. We can no longer just distribute by a labor theory of value. Do you understand?
Of course.
We have to distribute some way of distributing demand to the people, or else we're going to end up the Koch brothers will own everything.
You have
to
understand? Of course, you have to change.
Okay, that's the model. Do you want us to sign on to that model?
I'm not so sure.
Okay.
I'm not so sure. I think that cooperation, economic cooperation in the Middle East, with Israeli examples of cooperation, and Egyptian example, and Turkish examples, can transfer transform.
Who's got the only person I can see in the world that has the model that might have been relevant to it is Muammar Gaddafi, and we're dropping predators down his chimney. Yeah. And you're building, and the people, remember, the people in the Middle East, they don't see it Al Qaeda. It's the United States and Israel. To some degree. Because we are plutocratic. I wish I had the chart. You could show it. The wealth is all owned by a tiny class of people, and that's inclusively responsible for production. We don't have a way out of the labor theory of value, celebrating all the good work and all that. Because it pulls the wool over the eyes of the man. We're like serfs on a feudal estate, are we not? In the world, China, everywhere.
To some degree, but not there. Listen, China is...
No, but do we have a vision, economic vision?
Well, we have to have.
Do we have to have a comprehensive vision? If we're going to write it into the Constitution, what we need is an operating manual for spaceship Earth that is comprehensive. Our intellectuals are falling down on the job.
Right, that's
we don't have it. Where do we find it?
How
the only country that might have been an advance.
I'm not sure about Libya,
well,
but I would like to say that I think that the beginning here has to do with thinking. Unfortunately, we are not in the process of thinking anywhere.
I'm calling for people to think, not tunnel, not a little vision.
I understand.
Not Israel, not Jews, not a little thing, but thinking big. Where are the big thinkers that are thinking about things? Intellectual communities falling down on the job, are they not?
Listen, by the way, if you look at Africa, if you look at Africa, some states, some nations in Africa, I have been pulling forces together and are working with them with those forces.
Okay.
You don't hear much about them. Okay, but there's a lot of forces there. Even China is redefining itself by the minute. You know that what do you like more, coffee or tea?
China, well, I like coffee.
Okay, you see, in Chinatown,
but I do have an English background, so I must drink tea.
In Chinatown, in Chinatown, or in China, you can buy actually half coffee, half tea.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah, for people who cannot make up their minds.
Okay,
it's a yin yang. I think the yin yang.
So you're going to say China's giving us a model?
It doesn't.
Well, they got 10% growth rate all this time. They brought 300 million people up, but they still got $1 billion on less than $2 a day. They're going to have a demand problem.
They are having.
They can't do it. They can't distribute demand only by jobs, like serfs. They have to have some way of having capital, private sector, ownership developed to the people, and Gaddafi did that. He's the only country in the world that did it.
So
They
why
set up a
are they
private
having
sector.
why are they having a revolution there?
Because why did we have a revolution against feudal Europe? Because it was out of date. Why are we having a revolution about the way the world works? International Monetary Fund, all the institutions. Keynes said it's going to be massive, technologically induced unemployment. When you get an algorithm that can displace 600,000 people who used to punch cards, you don't need the people to produce, but the people have to have money to clear the market. That's the problem of our national economy now as we come to the debt ceiling and everything. It's the economy of the world. We don't have anything because everybody's all tied up on how wonderful it is for everybody to be a worker. 6% of this organized unions, but their unions never bargained to get some ownership of technology as a way of distributing demand to the masses.
By the way,
Gaddafi did. We're bombing him and killing his grandchildren.
Well, I'm not familiar with the facts, but yeah, I want to tell you that the biggest union in Israel, used to own the biggest union in Israel, used to own the factories. And the members were partners in that cooperative.
Well, did they have?
So they have the Israelis actually have a very good model.
Well,
so they have a variety of models that can be implemented.
Okay, if they do, that's worth
I'm not so sure.
Would they be willing to set up a constitution that would stand in opposition to the American imposed system that's on the world? America's the problem. The system in place is the problem. It's like the feudal order. It's been there 230 years and it's out of date with what's required. And there's nobody.
Well,
maybe Israel has a thing where they could challenge the United States.
The Israelis
but they get $4 billion a year. They're joined at the hip. They're part of it.
By the way, part of my idea is that Israel doesn't need that money.
Oh, really? Okay.
Israel,
well,
I think that if a child is born, after a few years, it has to stand on his own feet. Okay, whether there are American Jews or Christian Americans who support Israel or not, I think that's not the issue. The issue is the Israelis should stand on their own feet.
Well, perhaps so.
Yeah, and that will be the model. And I think what you're seeing today in Egypt or in Jordan or in other countries, in Syria, is the same thing. People would like to stand on their own feet, as you said, in order to have a different economic system. And I think it can be done in the Middle East if they put their minds together. And by the way, many people do not think that the Middle East has intellectuals or people who are thinking people. And I would like to inform you that the Middle East has some of the greatest resources of intellectualism.
Well, they've always had. They got a good deal of the Jewish community, which has been the leaders of the intellectual enterprise.
Unfortunately, those intellectual forces are not put into work towards solving problems, but they are looked through barrels of guns.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. We're dropping predators.
So
it's like some Roman candle going on predators all over the place, like some horrible science fiction movie.
I think part of the United States problem in the world is the fact that
big dog.
It's the fact that it's an empire.
Yes,
but
huge
it doesn't.
Empire, like never before.
But because of the American Constitution and the type of government we have, they don't recognize that they are.
So Israel should write a constitution that challenges the United States of America.
Can write it.
Challenges it fundamentally.
I hope.
Not just kiss the hem and get money and join.
I don't think
they're an extension of it. Israel is an extension of the American power.
Yeah, I think
they've
Israel
joined with King George III.
Yep.
They've joined the imperial forces of George III.
To some degree, anyway. But I'm not for creating models that would not function. I think the first thing to do is to create a background.
Well, that's exactly what the royal heads said about this craziness with Jefferson and all that when they made a break with history. We need to make a break with history with the main problem, the United States and their ally Israel.
By the way,
to break with that. Gaddafi might be the one that we could listen to. That would link Israel. That would link Islam and Africa, two of the most oppressed people in the world. Though we have to have somebody who's going to speak for the oppressed, not for the already rich and powerful. I
think a lot of young people today speak in Egypt for the oppressed.
They're trying.
I think a lot of young people in Syria speak for the oppressed.
One of the things, we run out of time. There's not enough time in this universe or this program, but Eli, thank you
very much.
Eli, thanks to Phyllis Yampolsky.
Yampolsky.
Your pleasure, Perception. Eliyho Matz, great guy. He's got a store down on 15th Street here in New York City. Get to it and give him a call and get that book, and let's get him, because he's a great writer, great thinker, and this fellow Bergson we should be calling up as a great hero of the resistance to the Nazi Holocaust.
Absolutely.
Thank you for viewing. Tune again. We'll be coming back tomorrow.